Good morning, folks in Facebook land. If you guys want to join me for this week's Coffee with the Cashflow Guys, just click on the link there in the title, and that will allow you to join me. If you can watch and hear one side of the conversation, or you can go to that link, register, and you can hear both sides, both the questions being asked and the answers. For registered users, the information is available as well online. On our website, you can watch the recorded videos from the past. So that's something that interests you, great. If not, that's fine too. This session runs about an hour long. And basically how it works is you ask the questions, I provide the answers, or at least I try. And we enjoy a cup of coffee together because it's Friday morning. The weekend's about to start. Because I'm a passive income investor, I buy real estate for cash flow. I get to take the weekend off. And I can relax. Banker's hours. The American way. Go ahead and fire up the Zoom meeting. Good morning, Bert. Morning, Bert. Morning, Lance. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, don't get in an accident. We can't have that. I get a couple more people on and we'll get started here in just a minute. Going to talk about some market indicators. Bert and Jenny, I got some exciting news for you when we talk next. Actually, you'll hear some of it on this call today. I got this.
Oh, wow.
This is worth reading, let me tell you. I'm going to just hit a couple high points this morning of different market indicators that are happening. We are in the right place at the right time.
Let's hope so. Did you get my email?
I did, yeah.
It's
Yep.
almost like I got to put 50% down.
Nah. I got a workaround. No worries.
Okay.
Always a workaround. That's why we don't do banks if we don't have to.
Yeah, no kidding.
This just gives us a good excuse not to have to worry about the banks anymore. Let's see here. We'll move my screens around. We'll be in business. Okay.
I mean, what do you think about that? Should I even proceed?
Yeah, we'll work on that later when we don't have an audience. Good morning, Chevelle. Good morning, Kira. Lance is driving, trying to be safe. That a boy, like a good little trooper.
Morning, Lance.
Hey,
Bert, good morning.
Lance, you get up around my neck of the woods. If you're in this area next week, let me know. I got one of my stackable units, the dryer lid. You got to put something heavy on it to get it to stay going, or the washer machine, actually.
Yeah, let's figure out how to get me up there. What's the deal with the 100K club? Is that every other week? So I was trying to figure out how to get up into your neck of the woods.
The next one's 3 weeks away.
Okay.
I'll let you know when it happens.
All right, I'd be down to make it work to get up there.
Okay. Bert and Jenny, gotta get you guys to the 100K club as well.
Yes.
I forgot all about telling you about it last time. Shame on me. Morning, Rago. Okay, so got a handful of you this morning. We'll see who else we can get on here. Give me 1 second.
Did you get everything fixed from last night so everybody could log on correctly or the normal way?
Well, I was having problems with the whole 9 yards actually yesterday. Let's see here. Bear with me 1 minute. The chat didn't work right.
Can't imagine your problems. I have trouble turning the computer on.
Yeah, well, it was one of those. So my landing pages crashed yesterday at like 4 o'clock. It was just one of those days where every possible thing that could go wrong, technological wise, did. Hold on, let me mute everybody. So yeah, that became its own set of challenges, that's for sure. But I was able to get it all worked out. Well, most of it. The chat still showed up all goofy. I don't know what happened with the chat.
Did an awesome job last night, man. That was really good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I could have gone a lot longer. I had to speed it up because it was like I was just scratching the surface, man. There was so much more I could have done with that. I had a lot more information to cover, but I wanted to be respectful of people's time. So we didn't even get through all the slides because that's just it. It's ongoing. That's why Larry's course is 4 days and why he lets people go repeat it for free. Because you were there at that course. You could keep taking that thing over and over and over again and still not get it all. Folks, if you're just joining, please click on your picture on your screen and just put in your first name and the market that you're in. For example, Bert and Jenny, Tampa. Chevelle, Tampa. I'll change mine. Actually, I'm going to leave mine the way it is in case you guys need to email me. But you see how Eddie's got his for Alabama. Good morning, Eddie. How's life up there in the Redneck Riviera?
It's doing pretty good. I can't complain.
I see you got all your teeth this morning. That means you qualify to run for mayor.
Good deal.
If you're easily offended, I would hang up now. It happens.
That's not really what the South is like. You need to come down here and see it for yourself.
Where do you think I live, young lady?
I don't know.
I'm about this far from Pasco County, Florida, which is the Redneck Riviera of the South.
I don't know. Florida's not really the South.
Well, you need to come down to Pasco County and run around Moon Lake, and we'll. Matter of fact, I'll shoot a video of the Moon Lake area, and you tell me if that's not the South, because it'll make most people blush. Not much shocks me. I mean, I buy low income housing, but Pasco County, yeah, whole different place.
On my picture, and I can't.
You click on. Are you on a phone or computer?
I'm curious. Green name.
There you go. Good morning, Kendrick. Kendrick's out there in Louisiana.
Tyler, how's Larry doing?
I talked to him yesterday afternoon. He's madder than a firecracker because he doesn't like, Larry. He's not that guy that if he misses something that he's committed to, he gets pissed. So he was really mad. I'm sorry to leave you hanging by yourself, and I know you're gonna have a million questions, and you're gonna have to run long because of me, and I'll buy you dinner. I'm like, keep talking. Dinner, drinks, jet ski. All that'll make me feel better. I'm feeling extra sad. Buy me a faster jet ski. But, oh, hang on. I got a chat coming in here. Let's see here. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, and we'll get rolling here. It's a few minutes after 9. As far as the ground rules, I just ask that I'm going to mute you all. If you have a question, I ask that you raise your hand. I understand that from time to time, people want to make comments on what other people are saying, whether that be me or one of the other guests. If you have your comments, please wait until the other person's done speaking. Then raise your hand. When I call on you, you're more than welcome to make comments. This is a learning environment. I ask that you respect the opinions of others, whether they be members of this group or me. If people get out of line, which sometimes happens, I will just shut you down. It's that simple. Don't want to sound like a prick, but unfortunately, sometimes people get a little carried away. So this morning, for those of you that don't know me, first of all, my name is Tyler Sheff. I'm the host of the CashFlowGuys podcast, which is a real estate investing podcast where we focus on investing for cash flow. I'm not a big believer of the fix and flip thing. I've been down that road, been there, done that, got the scars, got the tax bills to go with it. From there, I focused on wholesaling. I'm also a licensed agent here in the state of Florida. Believe it or not, yep, I am that dirty bottom feeder agent. I do from time to time offend people because kind of like our new president, I kind of say what's on my mind. If you can't handle it, well, hang up. I don't mean to offend you, but you can try to sue me, bring it. I'm a big believer in land trust, so you guys won't be able to find what I own anyway, except for where I live. But it's Friday. It's a great day. The sun's out today. I'm in an outstanding mood. I'm wound up, ready to go. I think I'm going to record a podcast after this. Can you believe that? This morning, I was reading the Marcus and Milchamp 2017 multifamily investment report. Folks, if you are active investors, or you want to be, you need to put this on your radar with Marcus and Milchamp right there. Marcus and Milchamp is a real estate brokerage. They specialize in commercial real estate. I believe, first of all, I have an abundance mentality. I don't believe that there's competitors in this business. I believe there's good people, bad people, and everybody in between. I think there's enough opportunity for all of us. So that's why I share information from my quote-unquote competitors. Marcus and Milchamp is a different brokerage than I work for. However, the information they put on their website is incredible. The reporting is right on task. I've been watching and reading their reports for years, comparing it to what actually happens. You can go back in history and look at some of their old reports, compare it to what happens, and then what actually happens, and you'll see they're pretty accurate. These guys know what they're talking about. A lot of you know that I'm a big fan of the Real Estate Guys Radio podcast. The Real Estate Guys Radio, they're big fans of Marcus and Milchamp as well. They use their reports in their show. So when it's not broken, don't fix it. If somebody else is using it, it works, it makes sense. Why shouldn't I? But a couple things I just want to cover with you about this is the 2017 forecast as it pertains to multifamily. And what I'm going to cover first is the National Apartment Overview. This is for apartment buildings, for those of you that are looking at investing in multifamily. They're saying for this year, projected job creation and rental household formation will support demand, while demographic trends also support low vacancy and steady pace of rent increases. That's good news for Uncle Tyler. Notably, the ongoing flow of millennials into the workforce, a segment of the population with a high propensity to rent, represents a robust driver of growth for the multifamily sector. So what that means in plain English is, those of you that are realtors out there that are thinking that this is going to be your year, I got news for you. The millennial generation, and it's interesting, I get to see both sides of the fence because I am an agent and I go to a lot of agent-centric events. And in those events, they're like, hoorah, hoorah, buy this new course. We're going to teach you how to market to the millennials so they can buy houses. Yet every other news medium that I read says that millennials are smarter than my generation. They're more up to beat, and they've realized that they can't buy real estate for as cheap as they can rent it. So they are going to be more inclined, all the experts are saying, except the National Association of Realtors, all the experts are saying that millennials are not going to be buying houses at the same pace that my generation did. So that's interesting. Everybody's got their opinion, but like I say, Marcus and Milchamp, they do their homework. They don't really have a membership behind it like NAR and some of the other organizations that put out this hoorah, go realtors, you're going to make a killing this year. They go on to say that developers will bring 371,000 units to the marketplace in 2017. Man, that's a lot of real estate. In addition, disciplined construction lending, proposals of increased government infrastructure, they're talking about Trump coming in. Spending could evaluate competition for construction materials and labor needed for multifamily construction. So guys, when there's competition in the marketplace, prices go up. Perfect example of this is there's a lot next door to my fourplex that I'm here in right now in Tarpon Springs, Florida, the vacant lot next door. Well, I could have bought the lot and made monthly payments, but instead I took the lot on an option contract. And the reason why I did that is I don't want to build on it yet because right now construction costs are at an all-time high. And it's information like this that tells you that construction costs are not done rising yet, because when there's competition in the marketplace, it drives the prices up. So materials are going to get more expensive, labor is going to get more expensive. Those of you that are swinging a hammer, good news, you're about to get a pay raise. Those of us that are paying people to swing hammers for us, might want to wait this out a little bit. So anyway, I have this on an option contract, this lot next door, because why should I make payments on the property now if it doesn't put any money in my pocket every month? So instead, I tie it up on an option contract, understanding that if I don't exercise my option in a given time frame, which in this case is 10 years, then I lose the option consideration. So win for the seller, lose for me. But I've locked in the lot at today's prices, because when construction costs go down, people are going to be looking for vacant land to build on. Well, I beat them to the punch. I went ahead and locked this up. So when construction costs start to trend downward, which is going to happen when the market does shift downward, single family houses, the market is going to crash again. We all know that. If you don't, pick up a newspaper. When construction costs go down, the lot happens to be the same size as the lot that my current fourplex is on. I'm going to build something identical to what I have here. And this thing's an absolute cash cow, so why not duplicate it? If it's not broken, don't fix it. They go on to talk about capital markets, and this ties in with what we talked about on the webinar last night. If you guys were on that webinar, if you weren't, that's unfortunate. We may do some replays in the future, but if you were registered and didn't make it, then you will be able to get a replay on that as well. Capital markets, they talk about higher interest rates and tighter lender underwriting could cultivate additional investor caution. Basically what that means is when the interest rates go up, underwriting becomes more strict, banks are going to be less likely, or investors more likely are going to kind of back away from the institutional funding. It goes on to say, however, a potential easing of Dodd-Frank regulations on financial institutions could create additional lending capacities for other capital sources. This is my point last night, what I had said last night about if you think you're going to depend on Bank of America and Wells Fargo to always be there to give you a loan, I got news for you. That's not going to be the case. As the market fluctuates, they fluctuate how they loan money. Those of you that are dumb enough to buy houses on credit cards, which I know a few, some people do, or that you get these easy peasy credit lines, when the market shifts, and we had this happen back in 2007, when the market shifts and the economy starts to dry up, which is going to happen, don't care who's president, it's still going to happen, these lines of credit are going to get diminished. The banks are going to look at those lines of credit they get out there like risk. And one way to manage that risk is eliminate your line of credit, or at least reduce your line of credit. My point is, if you want to continue to buy assets and build cash flow, you're going to have to learn creative acquisition strategies. And that means you're going to have to learn how to be a negotiator. Or you're going to have to be in a position to be willing to pay somebody else to do it for you. I'm for hire, but I assure you I'm not cheap. I'd be more than happy to negotiate your deals for you. I'll also be your partner. How about that? So you can either give me a piece of your money, or people like me a piece of your revenue from your cash flowing assets, or you can learn to do this for yourself. I'm here to tell you, I think the latter would be a better decision for you, because if you're always hiring somebody else to do 100% of your negotiations, there are going to be times where you're going to have to negotiate on your own behalf. And if you lack those skills, people are going to take advantage of you, especially when we see market shifts. So just keep these things in mind. This is a good opportunity to start getting this practice. If you have never heard of Grant Cardone, I think you should look at some of Grant Cardone's products that he has out. He's got some great books out on negotiation. One of his first books, actually, and frankly, I have it on my ottoman in the living room at the house right now, but I can't think of the name of it. But he's got some great books on negotiation. Reading books like on things like How to Win Friends and Influence People. Outstanding. You're going to have to learn how to negotiate, whether it be terms or opportunities that make sense. You're going to have to learn how to negotiate. Aaron, you asked about Hustle Town. Is that Houston? Houston. So I'm glad you brought that up. So according to this multifamily index, the markets with the highest expected employment growth. Now, employment growth is a huge indicator of what can happen in the housing market. Where there's jobs, that's where people move. Where there are no jobs or reduced jobs, people move away from those areas. So the highest growth is expected in Orlando, Florida, Fort Lauderdale, Salt Lake City, Seattle, Oakland, Sacramento, Dallas, Fort Worth, Raleigh, North Carolina, Denver, Colorado, and Phoenix, Arizona. Those are the highest expected job growth for 2017. They're expecting on average between like a 4 or 5% job growth all the way down to 3% in those areas. Markets with the lowest job growth expectations. Pittsburgh, number 1, lowest job growth. Houston, number 2. That's kind of scary, especially all the people that move there from Katrina. If they don't have a place to work, that's a problem. Cleveland, Milwaukee, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Louisville, Baltimore, and New York City are the lowest employment growth. So here's the thing, guys. What I take away from this is maybe I'm not going to be in a hellfired rush to buy houses or properties in Houston, but if I can come up with something that creates jobs, if I buy a business that creates jobs, what these numbers tell me is there's probably going to be a lot of people available to work, which means I should be able to hire people at a pretty reasonable rate. So if I lived in the Houston market, I may create jobs instead. That way those people have a place to work. Lowest expected vacancy rates for 2017. As a multifamily guy, this is important to me. These figures apply to multifamily. They don't necessarily directly apply to single family. Lowest expected vacancy rate is Minneapolis, St. Paul at 2.2%. That's pretty amazing. Miami-Dade, neck and neck. Sacramento, Detroit, Los Angeles, Cincinnati, Oakland, New Haven, Connecticut, and Orlando, Florida, are the lowest expected vacancy rates. The cities with the highest expected vacancy rates are Houston, Kansas City, Nashville, Tennessee, West Palm Beach, Florida, San Antonio, Texas, Baltimore, Denver, Raleigh, Dallas, and New York City. Guys, when you see highest expected vacancy rates, and if your market is listed there, that's a problem. So if your market's up right now and your properties are performing well, you may want to look at making the shift, maybe liquidating some assets in those states and investing in different markets. Now, Jordan mentioned in the chat that Montana's safe. Yeah, because there's like 8 people there and there's 7 buildings, so you're good to go. Maybe there's a barn and a stable. But he brings up a valid point, probably not even realizing it. Montana, look at it kind of like a tertiary market. Montana's a market that isn't really subject to any of these major economic shifts. It's kind of flatline. In other words, not a whole lot of people move in all at once, but not a whole lot of people leave either. So that tells me that if you're investing for long-term growth and cash flow and you slow and steady wins the race, maybe Montana's not a bad angle to look at. Of course, Jordan probably doesn't want me to put that out there for the public to see, but
hey, don't tell people that. Tyler, really quick, you bring up a really good point about knowing your market and knowing the trend of your market. I pulled some reports the other day about when the market crashed in 2007, how it affected my market. It was a 1% change.
Yeah, see? There you go. All right.
Some of the other ones were quite a bit higher, obviously.
So moving on, guys. The in the multifamily index, I just highlighted some of the areas that I know a lot of you are part of. This is the top markets for 2017, what they're projecting. Los Angeles, which is interesting because Los Angeles, if you remember, was also in has issues with job creation. Seattle, Tacoma, Washington, and Boston, those are the top three. LA, Seattle, and Boston are the top three multifamily housing markets in the country projected for 2017. Number 19 on the list, Tampa, St. Petersburg. Are you paying attention, Bert and Jenny? All the rest of you in the St. Pete area here? Where do you go? Lost them. Anyway, Tampa, St. Petersburg. And here's the difference. Here's the jump. LA went from number 11 in 2016 to number 1 in 2017. Seattle from number 9 to number 2. Boston from number 10 to number 3. Tampa, St. Pete went from number 27 last year to number 19 this year. Fort Lauderdale and Charlotte are other areas that were in that top, I would say, top 50. A lot of the Ohio cities, guys, those running around the rim of the Great Lakes, starting with Detroit, going around to Cleveland. They're projecting huge growth. Who knew? I never would have guessed that one. Who the hell intentionally moves to a snow belt? But, yeah, Candace, you can go on Marcus Millichap website, which I could put that up here in the chat before we sign off. But the Marcus and Millichap website offers these reports. You have to give them your email address and your first name. Big deal, because the information on there is so good, it's worth it. I don't hardly ever get spam from them. I don't get any spam from them, actually. Everything they give me is good stuff. But all these reports are available. You can get reports on your individual markets. So, like, if you're in the Baltimore area, you can get a clear picture of what happened in 2016 and a clear picture of what they think is going to happen in 2017. So that's real good reporting. At this point, do you guys have any questions? I got a little bit more to coverage, but Brandy, you were talking about waiting for a turnkey single family to come up for purchase. Guess I need to change my angle. Well, Brandy, first of all, understand these numbers don't necessarily reflect single family properties. Now, the job growth numbers absolutely do. Candace, Baltimore has been a kind of a high risk market for quite a while. I would dig deep in your research with Baltimore before you pull any triggers in that city. Now, if you're comfortable being a purveyor of low income housing, you could crush it in Baltimore. Keeping in mind, Baltimore is not necessarily a landlord-friendly city, based on what my research has shown. I looked at Baltimore after the riots to see what was going on there, and I compared it to Memphis. For me, it doesn't tickle my fancy, Baltimore, because I don't see much job growth in Baltimore. So that's concerning. And when you see the job growth almost flatline, it's not a place I want to really invest in. One of the reasons I like Memphis is constantly attracting big-time employers. You name it, they're there. FedEx is the number one employer there in the Memphis area. People working at the airport, making top dollar. Now, guys, in my coaching programs, this is one of the first things that I cover is market analysis. You have to learn how to analyze the market. I don't care if you're out there wholesaling, you're buying whole, whatever your strategy is. You've got to understand the market that you're investing in. You have to understand what drives the marketplace. You have to understand what your customers need. Think about who you're serving. If you're a landlord, think about who you're serving. Your tenant. Are you serving an A-class or B-class tenant or a C-class tenant? Reading these reports are a big help in helping you understand what's going on in the marketplace. Because if you're not paying attention to what's going on in the marketplace, I assure you, the market will educate you whether you like it or not. So keep that in mind. Let's see here, one thing in the chat. And Chevelle was nice enough to put that link in the chat for Marcus and Millichap if you're interested in going out there and taking a look at that. Guys, taking the time to educate yourself. Number one, this is going to help you identify market shifts, market fluctuations before they actually happen. If you go back and if you have the time, go back and look at some of Marcus and Millichamp's previous year reports. Compare them to what actually happened. You'll see that they're pretty darn accurate. But this year, the high yield index for 2017, Cleveland and Cincinnati are number 1 and number 2. Detroit is number 3. I never would have guessed that. Detroit's got no infrastructure. How could they possibly be number 3 in high yield? But they are. Tampa St. Petersburg is number 10 slot for high yield. We're going to be in the top 10 of markets in 2017. Not too shabby. I like that. Average cap rate. I'm not a huge believer in cap rate to analyze deals specifically, specific deals, because cap rate doesn't yield accurate information. It doesn't include repairs, and it doesn't include debt service. And people too often depend on cap rate to determine whether or not they got a good deal or a bad deal. That's not how you do it. Because you could have a great deal by cap rate, which quickly turns into a lousy deal based on the bank coming back telling you that you got to put 30% down. They're only going to give you a 5-year balloon, and on and on and on. So these are things that you have to look at the whole picture. Don't just look at cap rate and go, well, that's a great deal. Wrong, because I can show you deals that have 30 cap that are terrible deals. You would never touch them. But as far as a market perspective, Cleveland, they're predicting almost a 9 cap, consistent across the board as an average. That means that's off the chain as compared to what we've been seeing. 9 cap across the board is strong, and that covers all markets, A, B, C, D. Cincinnati right up there neck and neck. Detroit at about an 8 cap. Tampa, St. Pete between 7 and 8 cap. Not bad. So in those top 10 markets, they're projecting the average cap rate across all types of multifamily are going to be between 7 and 9%. That's not bad for an average. So what they're getting this from, guys, is what's necessarily on the shelf. The advertised prices, what things are going for. And I would probably say, I've been doing this almost 18 years, 95% of the people out there buying real estate today and as investors, they don't negotiate. They have a realtor knock $5,000 off the price, and if that, and there you go. I can show you that in my market, the properties are selling generally between 98 and 105% of market value of the listed price, which tells me there's not a whole lot of negotiation. And when there is, the negotiation goes the wrong direction. So that tells me investors aren't negotiating. So imagine if you could actually negotiate what you could do. If 9 cap is the average, what could you do if you had the skills to negotiate? That's where reading books, listening to podcasts, getting out there and practicing, using my garage sale idea that I've told you all about several times, and a few of you that I truly believe in that I've got to know need to get out there. Eddie in Alabama, I want to see you at a garage sale this weekend. Getting out there, rolling up your sleeves, finding something that's $20 and buy it for $5. Then take it to the next garage sale and sell it for $30. Everybody has the time to do this. There is no excuse. If you can't find a garage sale in your area, even in Montana has garage sales. But in Montana, it's a barn sale, but whatever. Buy a horseshoe, sell it to somebody next door. It's little things like this. And if you don't have $5, then hang up now. You don't belong on this call because you're not going to make it in real estate investing. Just be done. Sell your iPhone. Go get the flip phone. Remember those from last week? Spend $5. Go buy something on the garage sale. Get at least a 50% discount. At least a 50% discount. If it's already overpriced, get a 75 or an 80% discount. Then go to the next garage sale and resell it to some schmuck at the garage sale for a profit. At least double. And yeah, people are going to say no. And people are going to look at you like you got 2 heads because you're trying to sell a doll with no head, missing 1 foot for $15. But if you do that, you will crush it. Absolutely crush it as a real estate investor. That's one of the main ways I learned how to negotiate, is getting my pee-pee slapped at garage sales across town. There was a few garage sales they wouldn't even let me go to after that because I was making them cranky. But Gabriel says, Tyler, I love flipping random items like you're speaking of. Is that the best use of your time? Absolutely. Maybe not yours because you already know how to negotiate. However, for somebody that's new and has absolutely no negotiating skills, yes, it's absolutely the best use of their time. Running out there trying to get a deal or buying a list of private money investors, that's a big waste of time, big waste of money. Go out there and learn these skills. You're going to that's number one. Learn how to negotiate. Nothing else matters. Forget about the deal. Everybody's focused on, if I just get this one deal, or if I can just get some private money, or if I can just get the bank to approve my loan. Well, none of that matters, because if you go in and pay retail and you're losing money in your first investment because you don't know how to negotiate, then that doesn't make sense. That's not how it should go. So, you heard where they slap Aaron. I don't have to repeat myself. So, last thing I want to talk about real quick as far as the appreciating housing markets that I come off of this report. They're predicting that in 2017, they're going to have a limited availability of entry-level single-family homes. I'm going to say that again. A limited availability of entry-level single-family homes. Those of you that are playing in the single-family market, there is going to be a limited availability of entry-level single-family homes. That means if you happen to be a purveyor of entry-level single-family homes, you would probably have a pretty good audience, whether you're renting them or you're selling them on terms. Maybe you buy them on terms and resell them on terms, doing a wrap. All kinds of different ways you can do that. Doing a lease purchase, lease option, land contract, I don't care what you call it. But if you are the person that controls those entry-level homes, that's something you may want to think about. Mobile homes, this also tells me I might be looking at mobile homes on their own land. People that I work with here locally, we're gearing up to do a big marketing campaign for mobile homes. We're going to go walk in neighborhoods and talking to people. We're going to start getting these mobile homes under contract. Maybe reselling them on terms, keeping some of them as rental properties. Who knows? But the proof is in the pudding, folks. When the economy suffers, people are going to be looking for affordable housing. And if you're the person that provides that affordable housing, you're in a great position, an absolute great position. So, things to think about. So at this point, guys, I'm going to quit talking and give you guys the opportunity to ask questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. I will call on you one by one, and we'll unmute you when we call on you. Let's see here. Eddie, I know you got a question.
I do. Hi, this is Eddie from Alabama. So my question is with a deal I'm working with right now.
Okay.
And someone reached out to me yesterday who had interest in purchasing the property. But for it to work for her, she would have had to hold. She asked me if I could hold her mortgage for 60 to 90 days. And when she initially said that, I said that probably wouldn't work for this deal because I didn't really know what she was talking about. But after I reached out to the kingdom, they were saying that may be a possible option for me. So that sounds like a seller finance to me. So I guess what I'm asking is, the property is under contract for $13,000. If I go her route, would the seller still be able to get his $13,000 up front, or would it just be a monthly payment?
Well, it depends on how you structure it. I mean, what's your arrangement with the seller? Did you do a cash offer, or did you even make an offer yet, or what's the story with that?
Correct. So I gave him two options. As we were speaking, his pain point is that he has a investment that he's trying to pay off, and I told him that I had an interest in the property for purchasing it myself, which I do. So I said, I tell you what, I'll put down $100 earnest money. Let me market the property. Let me see if I can get that cash price for you. If I can't, then I would make an offer based on my investment criteria to hold on to myself. So that's the agreement both of us have. And it's a 30-day agreement. So I'm 30 days into the contract. So I'm trying to talk to people and see if things would be a good investment for them.
You want to wholesale it and you don't want to keep it?
I would like to keep it, but my particular investment criteria, what I've set out for like acquisition of the single family homes is, I think it's $2,400 to $3,000 down, And for this particular house, that would kind of like stretch my margin. But being as that this is the first investment, I kind of need some cash flow. I'm open to the idea.
Okay. And the lady that wants to buy it, why does she need you to give her terms? Why 90 days? I'm curious. What happens in 90 days?
Okay. So when I was speaking to her, she said her intention would be to flip the house. And I was like, okay, this isn't really a flip scenario, so I don't know if this would be particularly a good deal for you. Then she asked me what the comps are, and I'm like, before you tell me you want to flip a house, isn't that one of the first things you want to check out? In my head, I didn't say nothing. I was
Right.
like, okay, it's a good idea, but just trying to save her out of that. And I said, well, she said, give me a call back if you change your mind. So I was like, okay, I'll keep you on the list. So her intention is to flip that.
Okay. So essentially, she's probably wholesaling it. It sounds like. Yeah. And she wants.
She gave like a fake name to Fever Ramazra. Have you ever met a Fever Ramazra?
Yeah. So let's forget that she existed, because she doesn't. She's wasting your time. And let's go back to the original deal. $13,000 cash. How did you come across this property?
I was actually at a RIA event, and at the RIA, I just was talking to people, letting them know what I do. I told them, hey, my name is Eddie. I didn't say I was a wholesaler. I said I solve real estate problems. If you would take the time to get to know me and allow me to understand what are your goals in real estate, I would love to take notes down. And if I can't really solve the problem right now, I may be able to do it in the future. For me doing that, I got his business card. I called him up. I asked him what his goals were. He wants to get into multifamilies, etc. After me getting to know him, he told me he had a vacant property. So I was like, okay. And then he went on and said, okay, well, I know you're a wholesaler. I said, no, wait. I am a real estate investor, so I'll have an interest in looking at it as a buy and hold as well. So long story short, we talked and stuff, and I got on the contract for 13. He was originally asking 18.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So he's asking 18, and he wants all cash so he can take his cash and put it into a multifamily property.
I think he wants to pay off an investment that he had, another investment.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one question I would want to know is, why is it important to him to pay off that other property? I'm not going to assume. I'm going to ask. For those of you that don't know, Eddie is a member of our mentoring group. It's called The Kingdom. And then the link I posted there in the chat is a link to more information on that mentoring group. But Eddie, so he wants 18. He asked 18. You gave him an offer of 13 cash, and you don't have a buyer for this particularly because you were initially going to buy it, keep this yourself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it going to rent for, do you think? Is it ready to go as far as rental, or does it need rehab, or how much rehab?
This rental, it doesn't have the regular HVAC system. It's like the forced heating.
Okay.
The forced heating is missing on this unit. So in order to get it rent ready, it would need a forced unit. It would need, I think, the doors probably need to be replaced. The windows, two windows panes need to be fixed. Patching on the roof, and maybe like take up the carpet and like polish the floors. So when I was doing the math on it last night, and I was just adding up costs with how much all of this stuff would cost, it came up to be like $15,000. So I was like, I don't know. And the rent, it was rented originally in 2014 for $500, and I'm thinking that's the range this one is going to rent for, just because of the streets on it.
$500.
$500.
Okay. So I'm going to screen share with you guys real quick and show you how I'm going to look at this deal first. Very first thing I'm going to look at. He told me it rents for $500. So for $500, I'm going to use the hurdle rate, 500 divided by 1.5%. I need to figure out the max I can be into this property for it to cash flow. The max. And guys, this is a quick test method. I'm going to round it off to 33 grand just to keep it real. Okay. So now we know that we're at $33,000 is what the most we can really put into this. So you're talking about 13,000 cash, and you said 15,000 rehab, right?
Yes.
So that's $28,000 all in. So in that case, let's figure out 33,000 as a present value. Actually, let's do this. Keep it clean. What's it rent for? 500?
It was rented for 500, so I'm thinking 500, 550.
Hit the wrong key. Okay, so on a 10-year note, payment would be $397.73. You'd be losing your tail. So let's just do this. So I'm just thinking of a couple different strategies, and there's no wrong way necessarily to do this. Well, I suppose there is wrong ways, but there's several right ways to do this, and this would be one of them. I'm going to figure out how much debt this property can afford. I'm going to look at the $33,000, and let's say that I got $33,000 in notes or debt recorded against this property. Trying to figure out how much I can pay investors based on what the property can afford. So at $240.54, first thing I look at is at a $500 a month rent, I'm going to figure 50% comes off for expenses. Okay. So that means I got $250 left to pay for the property. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So based on that $250, I'm going to figure out what my mortgage payments would be if, in this case, if I gave an investor 8% interest over 30 years for $33,000, comes up to $240, which means I would make about $10 on this deal. I'm not excited about that. So a couple different things to think about. One, maybe it needs too much rehab to be able to give this guy anywhere close to what his numbers are. Now, the reason why I went 33,000, because remember, we talked about he wants 13 and we need 15 in rehab, so that's 28, right?
Mm-hmm.
I put a little extra on there. One, because the note investor may want to sell the note later at a discount, so we got to put a little meat on the bone so they can get paid. And it would be lovely if I could walk away from the closing table with my closing costs covered by the paper, right? So I don't have to come up with any of my own money. The problem is this deal's too thin to make any of that work. So in that point, Eddie, and I know you've been through my deal review several times, what are the only two things in the deal that we can adjust? And expenses aren't one of them.
How much is bringing in the income?
Nope.
And how much you put down?
500 is a set number. We've decided 500 is the rent. Let me explain why. If we try to say, well, I'll just rent it for more, I'm here to tell you, if the market doesn't support that, that's not going to work. You can't just say, well, I'll just rent it for 800. No, that's not how it works. If the market rent is 500, then the market rent is 500, period. So we can't change the income that it brings in. We can't change the expenses. All we can change is the price and the terms, period. So in this case, I understand that the seller wants cash. Totally get it. And we want to give him cash. But remember, what I've taught you in the past is I can give you your price, but you're going to have to give me my terms. That's what Larry teaches in his boot camps. I use that every single day, and it works. And especially when you follow up that statement with, is that fair? Is that fair, Eddie? I can give you your price if you can give me my terms. Is that fair? And if they say no, then that tells me you're done negotiating. Have a nice day. Save your time. When they say yeah, because usually most people will say yeah, because saying yes is not as painful as saying no. People don't like to say no. So one of two things needs to happen. We either need to figure out a way to change the terms or the price isn't going to work. So in other words, if he's willing to give you terms instead of cash, this deal, remember, there's $240 available to pay for this property total. And of that, you have to make a profit. So based on that, we can't afford to pay him $240 a month payments. All we can give him is whatever we need less our cash flow. So if we want to make how much cash flow, Eddie, on average? What's your identity?
My minimum I like to go is 200. 200 to make me feel comfortable on a deal.
Okay. So based on 200, there's $40 a month left to pay him, which means we're going to have to adjust the terms to be able to give him that $40 a month. Now, if he comes back and says, and folks, I know a lot of you are thinking, nobody's going to accept $40 a month. You don't know that. You absolutely don't know that. I'll take $40 a month from you for the rest of my life. Make sure those checks are on time. There's 2 F's in chef. I'd be more than happy to take a $40 check. No problem. I'll take a lot. You all can send me $40 checks every month for the rest of your lives. That'll be awesome. Let's see how that adds up. 37 people on this call, $40. That's $1,480 a month. Score. I'll put that with the rest. So don't assume that $40 won't work for him. What you have to educate him on the fact that the deal is only going to support so much. And there's $240 on the table to play with. And I use these exact numbers, Mr. Seller. There's $240 available left after paying the expenses. And we both know the expenses we can't negotiate because we're only going to be able to rent for so much. The expenses are so much. It's $240 left. How much of that do you feel is fair, sir? Well, I want the $240. Well, if I give you the whole $240, then why would I do this deal? You have a good point, sir. 2 different things we can change, price or terms. So maybe we take the term out longer and drop that payment. Maybe we drop the interest rate. So let's play with that for a second and see what we can do. Because remember, we want to create a win-win. So let's say we drop the interest rate to 6%. Drops the payment down to $196. Let's say we drop the interest rate to 0. That's looking better. $91.67. Is it realistic that you might be willing to take it at $91.67? No, you're gonna stay put. So let's just add some more payments on there and see what that does. We're gonna change it to 400 payments. Right? That takes us to $82.50. 500 payments. And again, some of you are going, that'll never work. Oh, it works. Trust me, it works. My point is, you see how we're adjusting the terms to get stuff done? Now, a lot of times they'll come back and say, well, it'll rent for more. Then why isn't it? Right now, you're vacant. I don't want to be in that same trap. I can't pay you, Mr. Seller, if there's no income coming in. I wouldn't want to commit to doing something for you that I know I can't do. Now, he's going to go back to, I want all cash then. I totally understand. And I can do that. And here's what that looks like. For me to give you all cash, I'm going to need to get this property. We're going to need to be about $7,000. Or you can do the rehab that I need to have done so I can rent this property. It's either one. I'm negotiable either way, whatever works for you. 7,000, or you can do the rehab and I'll reimburse you for the rehab. Which would you like to do? I have never had anybody say they want to do the rehab themselves, ever, including me. So that's just one way of many that you could structure this deal. Does that help?
Thank you.
All right. Candace in Virginia, Maryland, and D.C.
Hello, I know I had to cover it all, right? Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
My quick question was in regards to the information you just told us based off the Marcus Miller Chat website. So, as you know, my target market for buy and hold was in Baltimore. So, based on that, I knew that I was at a higher risk because of the depressive state that the area is in.
Mhm.
And I was willing to deal with that. But I mean, I guess to some degree, I didn't know that the projections was going to be that much of a shift for the area. But I was mostly focused on properties under 100K, and you can get multifamily homes here between 80 and 150K. But my intention was only to invest in seller finance deals, which I haven't gotten negotiated one. Sorry, my son. Which I haven't been able to negotiate successfully yet, but of course I'm still working on it. Um, so I don't know, and I knew that eventually I wanted to kind of transition to other areas of Maryland or Delaware. So I guess I'm just asking for your input as to whether or not you would continue to hammer at Baltimore, knowing that you could get a property for under 150. I mean, when I mention multi-unit, I don't mean anything above 4 units, of course.
Okay. So for me, if you, it all comes down to the numbers. If you allow for the market fluctuations, if your math and you're conservative in your calculations, and you can make the numbers work, if the numbers make sense, then go for it. I'm not suggesting you don't invest in a questionable market, because what goes down eventually comes back up. It's just that you need to shift your numbers to reflect that. Here's a good example. In the local market here, I'll use, let's say, a 10% vacancy loss. Well, Larry, he uses 5%. I believe in 10 because I'm conservative, and I'm investing a lot of times with other people's money, and I want to make sure that I don't ever have to make that phone call, and God forbid I've never had to, and I don't think, hopefully I never will, that I can't pay your dividend this month or this year, because I was so focused on getting the deal that I overspent for this property. I didn't allow for market shifts. That said, I'm going to come in higher with my due diligence numbers than most people would. So in your example, if the current market is showing you a 10% vacancy loss, maybe you would shift it to 15, 18%. Knowing that the market is going to shift, there's going to be increased vacancy, and you're allowing for that today instead of going, oh my God, when it happens later. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. So how do you determine an area's vacancy rate? I guess that's the next question. Is that also in the report, or do I just...
That data is available there. You can also go to a website called Sperling's Best Places, where it shows you what the current and past vacancy rates were for an individual market or zip code. And that's a great indicator of what to allow for, what to think about. So at the end of the day, as long as you're allowing for what may happen, then you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Sperling's Best Places, you said?
That's correct. It's bestplaces.net. I'll put it in the chat.
Awesome, thank you.
Kendrick in Louisiana, you're up.
Hey, good morning, Kendrick from Louisiana. Thank you, Tyler, again for your time. It's always great value. I'm looking at 33 units here in Shreveport, and just kind of having a hard time just kind of deciphering all looking at the income is kind of fluctuates, you know, and just trying to, I got as much information as I could, have the expenses and the income. They gave me a projected income, but I wanted to see all the actuals. I wanted to see what was the rent rolls. Just kind of really having a hard time trying to find like a medium, or just you just do like a, how would you just do like a yearly, because it seems like the income fluctuates month to month, and the expenses, it's kind of hard to break it all down. I guess I'm having a hard time wording the question.
Right.
It's just that the numbers keep changing from month to month, you know, so it's kind of hard for me to, how do I break this down and really evaluate?
What?
The first income, you send in like an income and expense report from 2013 to 2015. I'm asking for something from last year. He's working on that as well. But anyway, here's the kind of the numbers that are real quick. It's 33 units. The wanting 950 with 170,000 down, and the balance owner finance for 20 years is 6%. The income received in 2015, the actual, is 171,279.
Okay. How many units again?
It's 33 units.
33.
33, yeah, half and half of one bedroom and then half two bedroom.
Oof. Before we go any farther, tell me what's within walking distance of the place.
There's like a grocery store at Brookstreet's. I would consider this in between a Family Dollar and Walmart area, closer to more of a Walmart area. There's a grocery store. There's some restaurants. There's some new Interstate 49 that goes from I-10. And it ended in Shreveport, and there was a big gap in Arkansas and Texarkana that goes all the way up to freaking Canada. They're finishing the completion there, so they're very close to this new development of connecting a major interstate development.
Okay. So, guys, first thing I did was he gave me 2015 numbers. So, Kendrick, and what happened in 2016? Do we know?
Not yet. I've requested that report. He just hasn't put that together yet.
Okay.
So this is great, but I want to know what's happening now.
So, as it sits, if we take the 171,000, we divide that by 12 because we want to get a monthly gross income. That puts us at 14,250. We take 14,250. We divide that by 1.5%. That gives us 950,000. Oh my God! Everybody tells me the 1.5 rule doesn't work.
I know.
What? There's no such thing as a deal that will pass the 1.5, and I don't want to negotiate. I want to pay retail. I have no skills. My realtor won't return my call. That's because they can't negotiate either. But seriously. So 950K, so it passes the 1.5 rule. Outstanding.
Right.
That's the first thing we like. What I don't like is that it's got one bedrooms. And the reason why I don't like one bedrooms is because one bedrooms are generally more difficult to rent, and they result in a higher turnover unless you're in an area where maybe it's 55 and up because, old people die and they now need a one bedroom instead of a two. If there's a hospital or maybe a university in walking distance, that's the key. A lot of times people say, well, I bought it because there's one in that city. Dude, you're in Charlotte. It's a 2-hour drive to get to the university from that apartment building. So what I think about is, who am I serving, first of all? Who is the ideal tenant? And I'm going to want to know, first off, with one bedrooms, the first thing I want to know is I need real good proof of income, because I suspect, just based on experience, that vacancy is probably an issue with this unit.
Right now, currently, he says 100% occupied.
Right now, maybe. But again, trust but verify. Okay, great. Let's get it under contract based on everything you've been told, and then in the due diligence period, we'll actually go through everything else and make sure what's what. So from there, let's look at his terms. So he wants 170K down. One question I want to know is, why is that number important? That's the very first thing I want to know. I'm a big why person. I'm kind of like that annoying fat kid in the corner. It's going, why? I just say it different ways. Really, why is a big one. That's really less than 20% down, so that's fine. Here's the problem. I just happen to be $169,999 short of that 170K that you want. So there's a couple different ways you can structure this. The bank is going to probably want more money, which is why we don't like no banks, and that's why I put that no banks link in there so you guys can learn how to get around it. So if he's coming in traditionally, most people think that the seller is going to come in first position, because why wouldn't they, right? But the seller's not actually loaning you money. What he's doing is taking payments for his equity, because he's not giving you any money. He's just giving you the keys and a piece of paper called a deed. So what I would do, first of all, is look at, from a private money perspective, assuming this thing passes due diligence, this would be not rocket science to get a private money investor to come in on this for the down. I would say maybe, does it need any rehab, or are we ready to roll?
Well, it seems ready to roll. I'm going to go actually go look at the property. I just found this information. So,
Okay.
The expenses do kind of worry me a bit once I do kind of consider what some private money, consider debt service.
I mean, it passes the first test.
Right.
Not a big fan of the unit mix, but sometimes you can get around that with price. What it's really going to matter is when we get all the expenses and we plug in that inflated vacancy loss number, because I think it's important to really look hard at that vacancy loss. And if 10% is not realistic for that market, we maybe need to look at boosting it 15, 18, 20%. When I underwrite in Memphis, my minimum is 20%. Usually I go in at 25% vacancy loss. That's how I do business. That's why I don't lose money in Memphis. And I can tell you right now, I have 0 vacancy loss in 2016 on all but one of my buildings. But I still allow for it. And then this January 1st, I wrote myself a really big check because that vacancy loss, I didn't experience it. That was extra money in the bank. Oh, Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It's great. But there'll be years where that's not the case, and that money won't be there. So we allow for it. But at this point, I would look at, if the numbers make sense and the guy gives you some indication, I would write your offer that's very specific as far as what you need for due diligence. And since you're a member of the kingdom, if you, the mentoring club, if you need my due diligence checklist, let me know. I'll send you a copy of the due diligence checklist to give you a list of everything that you need to ask for, so we can make sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be. And if it's not a big deal, we'll just adjust the deal. We'll renegotiate to make sure that that's the case. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
It's all about, I have no problem writing an LOI, getting it under contract, subject to what I'm being told. We'll trust but verify. We'll get a letter of intent in place or a contract. If things are different, we just simply renegotiate. And then once we've got a commitment, we'll reach out to our database, because everybody's heard me say, build a database, build a database. You've got to, and I know, Kendrick, you have a database of people to talk to because you're one of the people that's been doing what you're supposed to be doing. You reach out to your database and let them know that you have an opportunity. You need to raise $225,000. I'm assuming there's a little bit of rehab. You're gonna have closing costs, the first year insurance, things like that are gonna be out of pocket. You have experience, so you don't need to put it in cash because you've got experience and you've got a team. So you're going to use the investors' capital to infuse that into the deal, get all these things taken care of. You're the puppet master. You're going to manage the managers, and investors get their return, and everybody's happy. Easy peasy.
At the Rio last night, I met a gentleman that's a pilot from the area, but he's been moving around a bit. But he's ready to deploy some capital, specifically in the multifamily, 20+ units. And the whole time I was just like, hey, I already knew about the deal, but I didn't bring it up yet. I wanted to kind of really do my due diligence a little bit more, and then kind of maybe present this. And even the gentleman that's running the deal, I mean, he's been in single families for a while. He's ready to bump up and utilize his resources of being this kind of, he's held this meeting now for a while, and now he's ready to really kind of capitalize that. And
Good.
Kind of the head of influence, and we really kicked it off. So, yeah, I'm kind of excited about. I just want to be able to bring some quality, not just waste these guys' time with junk.
Absolutely.
Really kind of litmus test first.
It sounds like you might be sitting on a potential great deal. Just make sure that you negotiate based on the fact that we don't like 1-bedrooms. So we may want to adjust our pricing and our math to reflect that. And I share that with the owner. Hey, the big mix of 1-bedrooms, as you well know, Mr. Seller, shaking your head. is not good. And they'll start saying, yeah, they can't stop themselves. They start twitching. Yeah, I know that sucks.
Maybe if I could even get the terms a little longer, that would help. I'll find out why he needs that money down. I know he wants this gentleman is he's kind of known. He's an attorney in town, and he's the big dog at the sheriff's sale. Oh, there's Big Fred.
Yeah.
People show up, they see him, they just turn and walk out because they know that he's doing everything. But he's just But I know he probably scooped this up pretty cheap. But he wants to get out of it. Really weird.
I will say this. With the numbers on this deal, try to bring in just one investor that can swing what you need, because the deal, I don't think, will afford a syndication. Syndication is going to cost you a ton in legal fees. It's, when you do a private placement memorandum, you're looking at starting at 20 grand. It can go as much as 50 grand. So that's just in legal fees. So if you can bring one single investor in to pull the trigger on what you need, the 200, 225, whatever, go that route, and just make sure that you use a SEC compliance attorney just to help you through the paperwork. To make sure one agency in the government you don't want to play with is the Securities and Exchange Commission. Raising capital, and I know guys in RIA meetings are always like, they're pitching stuff. I see people putting it on Facebook. Don't do that. Someday.
Exactly. What would be fair for an investor if they would come into play would it be just for the what do you think is a fair interest return for them?
Oh, that's my favorite question ever. I love that question. Just like when we're wholesaling, what I think about a property or what I think about a return means nothing. What matters is what's the investor's needs are. For example, if you bring a doctor or even an airline pilot into this deal and you give them a 12% return, let's say, come tax time, they're going to be hating you, Kendrick, because you're going to create a tax problem for them. You're going to add additional money to their bottom line. That's not good. That's not what they want. What they need is tax savings. Okay? So when that happens, you have to figure out what's best for the investor, and the best way to figure that out is to simply ask them and to get their tax professional involved in the conversation. Because you can structure the deal to where they can receive some or all of the tax benefits of the transaction. And how that's done depends on the best way that their tax advisor wants to see it structured, so that they can make sure they capitalize on that and give them all the tax benefits. If you don't have a big tax obligation, give away the tax benefits. Say, I don't have to pay tax anymore because I have enough assets and enough things going on to offset the income that those things pay me. So I don't have a tax obligation. Now, when I bring an investor on, I can immediately give them all of the tax benefits. So when I'm out there working with investors, I focus on people that are high W-2 income earners, because I can give them tax savings, which is huge. How much savings that is depends on the individual taxpayer. Some people that could equate to 10%. Other people it could equate to 0.5%. There's no way of knowing until you have designated that person, and that person has sat down with their tax professional and gone through it. And I'm going to get a tax guy here locally probably to join me on one of these sessions to give you guys some advice in that regard. I'm not a CPA. I don't pretend to be. But that could be huge to them. Now, to a guy that doesn't really care about the income tax, he may want what I like to call quadrant 3, which is an interest rate. And in that case, what he feels is fair based on his previous investments is, and I always say it that way, based on your previous investments, tell me what your last 5 deals. And when they tell you that the last 5 deals they made 6-7%, and now they're suddenly asking for 12, makes it a little more difficult for them to ask for that. But that said, ask them.
Or even if you offer 12%.
I don't make offers, ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you were to do that, they may think it's a scam or something. Well, wait a minute, you're offering 12%.
Yeah, exactly.
On my last 5 deals, I only made 6. If they would have just told me 6 to 7, then I'm like, well, hey, maybe we can do a little better than that. Just maybe 8.
What you wind up settling on should be should tie to the risk factor. In other words, if you're in a high risk deal, and of course you're going to disclose that this is high risk, then make the return conducive to that. But don't try to raise money at 2% in a high risk deal, because if it goes bad and you wind up speaking to the man, they're going to crush you. On the other thing, if it's a low risk deal, well, then you don't need to pay 30% returns if it's a low risk deal.
Would it be fair to ask for a little operating expense money at closing for bringing the deal?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Syndication fee, yeah.
A few $1,000, just kind of keep my keep the food coming in, keep the lights on.
Depending on the deal, I'll go between 3 and 10% of the deal, depending on how much I have to do, because you're going to have to do the due diligence, and you're going to have to pay a lot. You're going to have to pay out for due diligence, not like buying a house.
Finding these deals, but
Yeah,
costs money.
absolutely.
Okay.
So, yeah, I always take an acquisition fee, and I'm a licensed agent, but I can't collect a real estate commission outside of state lines. But when I do a syndication outside of state lines, like in Tennessee, I just take an acquisition fee or a due diligence fee. And that's perfectly legal.
Would that be 3 to 5% on total purchase, or just money brought in?
Total purchase. It depends on what you can negotiate. And a lot of that depends on what cost you're going to have. If you think you're going to get a $100,000 due diligence fee on a duplex, that's not going to work. I have people try that. And that's why wholesalers fail in big apartment buildings, because they're trying to make a home run wholesale fee. It's like, dude, you just went out and found some schlep in a bar that knows a guy that knows a guy that knows a real estate agent that saw this thing on LoopNet. That doesn't qualify you for $100,000. Here's $100. Pay your bar bill. Have a nice day. So.
Awesome. Great.
Let's see. We'll take one more question here before we wrap it up. Candace, what about Zachary? Candace? Okay. What you got, Lucius?
I wanted to know what class of buildings are you buying and in what class areas?
I like D and C neighborhoods, and I like C and B neighborhoods. I won't touch A class ever, not even if you gave it to me, because when markets shift, those are the first ones to suffer. See, the poor people, they were poor whether the market's up or down. You can't hurt them. They're already poor. Where they got to go. So if I can provide them value, I don't have any issues. That's why we do so well.
You're okay with 42-year-old?
Oh, yeah. The bigger the train wreck, the better. If you saw some of the buildings that I bought, you'd think, well, hell, when I bought them, I thought, oh, my God. First time I rolled into Memphis and went up to the building that I was already under contract on, and I already had $90,000 in escrow, I called my wife and said, I think we are in deep, deep trouble. You better start selling stuff on eBay, because I think we blew it. Yes, Kendrick, D-class properties in a C-class neighborhood. Absolutely. And you'll find a lot of those, believe it or not. A lot of those.
Looking at 11 right
In
now.
Atlanta?
Jacksonville, actually.
Oh, see, Jacksonville's an interesting market. I've started kind of keeping an eye about Jacksonville. I'll say it's interesting. That's for sure. Not a bad market by any means. I would definitely look at Jacksonville. I don't have a team up in Jacksonville, but I know enough people up there. I could probably build one right quick. 6 months, I could put a team together. So.
Once I run some numbers out,
Absolutely. Now, do you want to just wholesale it, or do you want to come in as a partner in the deal and do the work, or?
Yeah, I would be one of the partner deal.
Okay. Good. 'Cause I need someone else to manage Jacksonville. Not me. Not me.
Yeah, I'll run the numbers. I'll let you
Okay, that works. All right, guys, it's about quarter after. I'm going to have to go ahead and wrap it up there. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come out. I hope you found some value in this. If you know somebody that would get value from what we're doing here, send them over to the cashflowguys.com/coffee link and get them to register, and we will invite them on in. If you guys have not listened to my podcast, you can do that on cashflowguys.com/podcast. See, I got one more question here I can take. Nope, I guess not. Somebody trying to say something?
Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Eddie.
Okay. This last question is for the deal that you will just working through with me.
Mhm.
You said that the most I would pay on it is $7,000 cash, and I actually got an offer for $7,000 cash yesterday. So I'm trying to ask you, how did you come up with the $7,000 cash so I can have future reference when I'm looking at these?
I call it PO. Pulled it out of my ass.
Oh,
Because you're dealing with such small numbers, does it matter? It's like $7,000, then take it at 5, put $2,000 on it, and everybody's happy. Sometimes you got to do a WAG, which is also called, it's an acronym for Wild Ass Guess. Because in those numbers that small, $5,000 or $7,000 isn't going to make a huge difference. Does that help?
yeah, thank you.
All right, guys. All right, guys. You have a great week. We'll see you next Friday. We appreciate you taking the time to come out. And if you have any questions, you want to replays, if you've registered, all of you that have registered and have got the link, obviously you're here. My web people are putting this on the website. There's going to be a members only section of the website. If you're registered, you'll have free access to that. You can watch the replays. I'm going to put some other bonus videos and stuff in there, different topics, and I may expand on some of the things that we talk about in separate videos. All of that will be available coming soon on the website. So watch your email for the links for that. You guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you later.